up next, we've got James Whitford. James comes from Joplin, Missouri today, and he's the executive director of Gardens Ministries, and he's executive director of True Charity. And he's here to talk about his story in running a ministry and running a nonprofit, a local nonprofit in the Joplin area, his experience with that, and then why he started True Charity and why he thinks True Charity is a solution to some of the issues that a lot of nonprofit leadership face today. And he's going to talk about some of the solutions that True Charity is starting to offer. James, how's it going today? Thanks for coming on.
Hi, Rick. Great to be with you today.
All right. So give us a little history. You run a ministry called Watered Gardens in Joplin. Tell us a little bit about that to start and how you got involved with that. I know you've been doing that for quite a while.
Sure. Well, certainly it was our faith in Christ that led us there. My wife and I co-founded this ministry in 2000. Joplin is in the southwest corner of Missouri, and that's our home. And so we wanted to do something to help people who were struggling in poverty and homelessness, and decided to launch a very small day outreach center. So back in that day, Rick, it was just a single room that we were renting in a building and helping meet needs. And we learned a lot of things along the way, thinking that, boy, if we just, people come in, they need clothes. If we help them with clothes, we're really helping them. If they come in and they need food and we help them with food, we're really helping them. And then learned in the first few years that our good intentions weren't producing the effects that we had hoped for.
Got it. So basically you started with a room, got to a bigger room, mostly was giving away possessions, items, clothes, food.
Yeah, it was just meeting material needs, right? Of course, there was a lot of compassion involved with that, but compassion is, of course, a great thing, but it yields some activity. I mean, so people feel compassion, they want to do something. The something that we do is charity, right? But charity can be very ineffective or it can be effective. And that's really been our journey over 20 years, is how do we get really effective at charity work? And read a book one time called Toxic Charity by Bob Lupton. And he's got a lot of experience in urban ministry work in Atlanta. In his book, Toxic Charity, he talks about 5 steps to dependency. He says if you give something to somebody once, they'll appreciate it. If you give the same thing to them again, they'll have an anticipation that you'll do it a third time. If you give it to them a third time, they'll have an expectation that you'll do it a fourth. If you give it to them a fourth time, they'll feel entitled to it. And a fifth time, they'll be dependent on you for it. So it's appreciation, anticipation, expectation, entitlement, and dependency. Well, when I read that, Rick, I immediately realized we're experiencing that in our mission. So we had to change things, and we began to change our model and connect our community in some unique ways, and all of that led to the formation of our True Charity initiative.
Got it. And so what did you guys start doing differently at Watered Gardens?
Sure. Well, the ministry continued to grow, and one of the first things we did is we realized, gosh, we're helping people with whatever, and then they're going to some other place in our community and getting the same whatever, and they may not come back for a few months, but we have no idea where they've been or what they've received from other people. So we launched a networking tool in our community that connects nonprofits online real time. Now, we've since connected more than 100 nonprofits together to share information online, so it's instantaneous. Now, this helps us to target our charity more accurately. It helps us to steward our resource more effectively. It's a very important tool. So that was one thing that we did. We realized, gosh, we can't just be a Lone Ranger organization in a community thinking we're going to do good if we're not sharing some of that information with other organizations and them doing the same. That was a huge help for our community. The other thing that we did is we realized everybody who's coming in our doors asking for something has some potential, capacity, and ability. Mm-hmm. Far too often we look at people who are hurting, struggling, impoverished, and we think, oh, you poor person, and they need to give you something. Well, we do need to help the poor. We feel a conviction by, it's a Christian mandate to help the poor. But how do we do that? Just giving stuff to people creates dependency. And a great book by Marvin Olasky called The Tragedy of American Compassion. In that book, The Tragedy of American Compassion, he says dependency is merely slavery with a smiling mask. Powerful line to remember. And it's true. So how do we break out of that? I mean, here comes this guy. One guy named Randy came into our doors. It's snowing outside. He has no shoes on. I mean, I'm looking at his feet thinking, man, he's probably got frostbite. I dry his feet off, get him some socks and shoes, say, hey, he's got a chronic alcohol problem. He goes out the door. A week later, he comes back, same situation. It's like freezing temperatures. He doesn't have shoes on. Now, I can continue to give Randy shoes over and over again, but then he becomes dependent on me for it. Or I can have him earn his shoes. So that was the other big thing that we did. We not only connected our community together, but we started what we call a worth shop. We call it a worth shop because we believe work awakens worth in people's lives. So now every person who comes to our doors, we're not just looking at the hurdles or the challenges they have or the brokenness that they've experienced. We're looking at their capacity, potential, and ability and entering into partnership with them. So this is a part of humanity, this aspect of reciprocity and exchange. To eliminate people from markets where they're exchanging their own labor for something that they need is really dehumanizing. So we've changed our whole ministry model where everybody's earning what they need, whether it's food, shelter, clothing, all the basics. Now, certainly if somebody's unable to work, we're going to help them. But almost everybody can do a little bit of something.
What kind of work do people usually do when they come in?
Well, that's a good question, because you can't have something that requires a lot of training. People are coming in, they want to earn clothes, or they want to earn food for the day. So we've created some things that are very simple. We have copper recycling, where we take copper out of radiators and we craft them into bracelets and stamp them with whatever people want on them. We do leather work, where we're cutting leather and staining it and creating journals out of leather. We have a little coffee business called the Redeemed Bean Coffee. And so they can be helping with roasting and bagging coffee that we have. So those are some of the things that we do, but there are a lot of things around a mission our size now that we've grown that people can be employed with a variety of different things.
Fantastic. And what were some of so you also networked with charities in the area, and what were some of the benefits you guys started to see there?
Well, that was great because, for example, people are in poverty for a variety of reasons, right? A lot of it's generational, and a lot of that deals with an inability to interact socially the way that you need to. And so you find folks that have behavioral problems and issues. So one of the things we found was if a person went into one of the nonprofits or churches that were a part of our network, and they had some explosion or something where they were asked to leave, they could literally put that in the system, and when they come through our doors, we'd say, hey, we see that you had a problem over here. We want you to go make that right. Now that was fantastic to watch those episodes of sending a person back where they go back and say, hey, I'm sorry I got angry like that. And to be able to apologize and rebuild that relationship with that charity leader at that other mission, rather than just walking away from another burnt bridge, right? Rebuilding that bridge. So that was one thing. The other thing was just being able to track who are the people that are really stuck cycling in our community. I mean, like I said earlier, you may see somebody once every few months and think, well, they just need temporary help. But if they're literally just kind of on a cycle around the community of benevolence that's disconnected and you don't know it, well, then they're dependent on you for all of that as a community. So we were able to target those folks who were high frequent flyers, for a lack of a better term. And then what can we do to target and really make sure we're helping those individuals? That was very helpful too.
Yeah, it sounds almost like how teachers would keep an eye on students in school or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're always careful when we educate people. This is not a paternal thing.
Right.
Right. We're not wanting to be paternalistic or We certainly don't want surveillance. I mean, that's not what it's about. It really is about how do we help the person in need? And the more that you and I know about what's really going on, we're going to be able to address the real issues that are going on with the person. And if you're disarmed with no information, then you're just left to go, well, I guess you do need some gas money. But maybe there's something else that's really going on. And that helps us to know how to help that person better.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, so John showed up for the third time in 6 months, and he says he needs gas money, but when they finally talk to the nonprofit down the street, turns out, he has a drug problem. And, okay,
Exactly.
Let's get him some help there, like that,
yeah,
right?
And so that's right. And when we put goals in that system, we could set a goal at our mission, or another nonprofit could set a goal. When they come in, we're able to look at that goal and urge, that person and help them along on the goals that they've set that are going to better their lives. And so we're able to be a community of accountability in that way. It's really, really important. So now we're helping through our True Charity Initiative, Rick. We help other communities get connected like that as well.
Got it. And tell us, we were talking offline about the certification, which is something new.
Yes.
So tell us about the True Charity Certification.
Sure. Well, and just to introduce the True Charity Initiative, the ministry we started in 2000, and along the way we were, of course, as we've been talking, figuring out more effective ways to do things, but we were really running into too much bureaucracy and government help that was trying to help our neighbor in need, but they didn't even know our neighbor. They don't know who. In fact, I'm thinking of a guy right now named Rick, who I was mentoring, and he missed, he has your name. So, and he missed an appointment. And so when I finally caught back up with him, and he's been struggling with chronic homelessness and was raised with a mother who was a drug addict, no father in the picture. It was a really rough childhood, And so I'm mentoring him, and he misses his appointment. I catch back up, and I said, Rick, what happened? Where were you? And he said, well, I was in jail. I said, was it public drunkenness again? He said, yeah. I said, Rick, as long as I've known you've never had a job, how in the world are you affording that? And he said, well, the last binge, I just sold my, he called it an Obama phone. He said, I just sold my government subsidized cell phone, and they go for $50 on the street now. They're smartphones. So they go for $50 on the street. So everybody's like, nobody's stupid. If government's going to give stuff to people, they're going to liquidate it if they've got an addiction. And so the problem is that I know Rick, and I know Rick didn't need that phone for something. But when you've got government coming into your community saying, well, we're going to do this, means-tested welfare programs. If you're below this poverty line, we're going to help you with stuff. That's such a bad idea. So we launched our True Charity Initiative to say, hey, enough. We want less government in our local communities trying to help people, and we want to see neighbors helping neighbors, churches, local charities like mine, people who know the people in their community being the first to help them. So that was the True Charity Initiative.
Okay.
And what that means is we're looking for organizations that are privately funded, outcome-driven, meaning they're measuring their impact, right? And they're work-oriented. They're not just handing stuff out. Those are the three things that we look for in an organization to be certified. And for us, that's the definition of a true charity. Privately funded, you're measuring your impact, and you're not just handing stuff out. And so we're beginning to certify and identify what are those charities in our local region, but we'd love to see that nationally as well.
Got it. And what were some of the state-funded things happening in your area?
Well, I mean, it's like in every community, right? We see people getting signed up for food stamps, and for example, this happens. We have, you want to go to work, you may end up at a particular mental health facility that does urinary analyses for people going back to work, so they have a connection with employers. But they'll ask the question when they're going in for the drug test, have you ever suffered any emotional trauma? If the person says yes, they get routed to a doctor for an appointment. And then if they diagnose them and start them on medication, then they can get them in like a shelter plus care HUD housing program. and then they co-qualify for food stamps. And then all of a sudden, and I've had guys that have come back and said, man, I just wanted to go to work. And these people are literally trying to put me into subsidized housing. Just because I'm homeless and I want a job doesn't mean that I'm a charity case that needs to be on drugs and in a HUD house. And that's the kind of thing that's happening all the time. One kid named Seth was in a drug alcohol rehab facility. They signed him up for food stamps, Rick. He didn't even do it. They sat down to a computer and signed him up, and then got him on a HUD housing waiting list, told him that it'd be better if he didn't work for the next 3 months, he'd have a higher chance of getting the HUD house, right?
Of course.
Well, Seth, of course you can, human nature is to take the easiest way out. So he's considering this. Here's about our long-term work-ready program that's 12 to 15 months at our mission, and decides to go for that instead, where you've got to give up all your pursuit of government stuff. And now he's graduated our program a year later. He's full-time employed at a hospital, has his own apartment, is on no government welfare at all. So that's the tension that we find. And we're like, hey, there are a lot of Seths out there who are getting wrapped up in the system that shouldn't. And we want to make sure we're doing our best to make sure people like Seth are going into a flourishing life.
Yeah, it really does. When you give people stuff without really assessing where they are, it just squanders their potential. Yeah.
It does. We've got to be investigative about our approach and really get to know people that we really want to help. That's why when people say, hey, James, what do I do about the person holding the sign that says, we'll work for food? I say, take them up on their offer, if you can. And then other than that, at least go and sit down in a restaurant and get to know them a little bit. Maybe there's a McDonald's or a Hardee's nearby or something. But you don't want to just hand cash out the window.
Right. Okay, well, we're almost out of time. So tell us a little bit about how we can find you, True Charity, Watered Gardens, and you had mentioned offline an event as well. So yeah, absolutely. Well, truecharity.us is our website, and so that's the arm of our mission that works in education and advocacy. So truecharity.us, you can learn about all of the principles and the philosophy that we believe in, and how we practice our ministry, which is wateredgardens.org. Wateredgardens.org is how you can find out more about our local nonprofit in Joplin and what it's doing. We do have an event coming up, Rick, and if anybody would love to come to that, we'd love to have them. It's all day at Missouri Southern State University in Joplin on Friday, September 13th, coming up soon. And that is going to include Bob Lupton, the author of Toxic Charity. So he'll be our keynote speaker. And we have Hugh Welchel coming from the Institute for Faith, Work, and Economics in D.C. We've got Randy White, who leads the Fresno Center for Community Transformation. We'll have different tracks of education that folks can get involved in on that day. So go and find out more about that. It's truecharity.us/Summit 2019. truecharity.us/Summit 2019. Great, and we'll have all of that in the notes below. And well, James, thanks so much for being on, and thank you for all the hard work and service.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Great to be with you and to share a little bit.